I suppose, call it an awkward situation, but that would probably be an understatement. For those involved in co-parenting, the issue of vaccination can be, well, and is in some cases, a minefield. Alyssa Bach is with Shulman Partners and joins us this afternoon. Good afternoon, Alyssa.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
I'm very happy because we're going to Tova later, and now we have Bach. So things couldn't work out any better around here.
Excellent timing.
When the vaccine passport came into effect last week, it put a little bit more urgency on this issue of parents who are on both sides of the vaccination fence, didn't it?
Yeah, what we're seeing is that now that you have all these restrictions that are really being put in place, and as we're entering the colder weather and more activities are occurring indoors, having that vaccine passport is what's giving people access to a lot of the things that they may want to do with their children. And so that's where we're seeing a lot more inquiries about what if your child is not vaccinated yet. Yeah,
and that's I guess already we know that this is a high conflict situation, right, in most of these cases?
Yes, it's something that throughout the pandemic as a whole, it's just been different areas of conflict. First, it was dealing with schedules, and then it was dealing with schooling. And so now we're seeing with the vaccination, if you have one parent who is pro-vaccine, another parent who is not on board with the vaccine, now you have this disagreement that it's really polarizing because there's not a middle ground. There's not something to be negotiated to find kind of that compromise. It really is where it's one or the other. Yeah,
as opposed to sharing custody or this is how many days we have, et cetera. This is not, well, we'll give him half a vaccine and he'll be fine.
Exactly.
For parents who are going through this, like what advice can you give? That it is very polarizing. So there's no middle ground. Sometimes, lawyers are mediators as much as anything else. So what do you do in that case?
Really what you need to look at is what the government recommendations are. And I say that because when we look at separated families, they're going to either decide things together or they're going to end up going into the family court. And when the family court is deciding issues, when it comes to COVID safety measures, they're not there to assess whether or not something is scientifically accurate or what kind of the general merits on it are. In that stance, they're looking at what are the government recommendations and directions, and that's what they're going to follow. And so what we see coming out of the courts is that more or less the court directives are going to fall in line with the government directives, and that it's deemed to be in your child's best interest to be getting the vaccine. That's where they're going to be leaning. So unless there's a reason why they can't be, if that's where the parents ultimately end up, that's what you want to be taking into consideration.
So have there been situations, Alyssa, where courts have ordered vaccination?
So at this point in Ontario, we haven't seen any case law with respect to the vaccine for children. There were a couple cases in the States where it's come up. Ultimately, what they're looking at, though, is it something that is for the child to be receiving? Are there any safety concerns if they don't receive it? And what's going for them? We also have to take into consideration that right now the vaccine to children who are 12 and up, and in that age range, we also have in Ontario the Healthcare Consent Act. And what that gives is this extra kind of factor where children are given deference to the ability to give their own informed consent in certain healthcare regions. So that's something as well, is that if you have a child who is saying, look, I'm informed, I've done my research, and this is something they're looking for, even if their parents are against it, there are certain healthcare areas that are permitting the vaccine.
An entirely different situation in talking to a 12-year-old about this or talking to a 17-year-old about this, right?
It all depends on maturity level, because you can look at a very mature 12 or 13-year-old and a 16-year-old who hasn't put in the time to get informed consent. And so this is where it is creating kind of that extra factor of complexity.
I guess this is one of those things that nobody talked about when they separated.
No, it's something that nobody really predicted, and that's where we're seeing it now, is that with these vaccine passports, it's really putting that extra level of pressure and tension, because if you look at the activities that are going to be prohibited for sports, now you can't spend time going to a sporting event with your child during your parenting time. You can't go to the movies. And so that's where we're seeing it coming to us as questions now, is that what if one parent is vaccinated, has their passport, the other parent isn't vaccinated, the child's not yet vaccinated, but now the parent who is and who has their passport can't do these activities with their child until they're also vaccinated.
You mentioned that for fully vaccinated parents who are co-parenting, the vaccine passport system might make life a little bit easier. How so?
So that's where, if you have a fully vaccinated parent and a fully vaccinated child, or a child who's under 12 and therefore not eligible and exempt from the vaccine passport, now they have all of these different liberties available to them for activities as we kind of get into that new weather, where you have the different sporting events, where you have concerts, where you have indoor activities, and it just opens up more for them.
Alyssa, thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Alyssa Bach is with Shulman Partners. It's an interesting situation. Now, the same could hold true for people who are still together. You could have one parent on one side of the vaccine fence, another parent on the other side of the vaccine fence, and perhaps they cannot agree on which way you go. Of course, in all these things, it's largely a matter of communication, but as Alyssa rightfully points out, with the, I want to say, commitment to each side becomes a little bit more difficult. As she said, the courts have not gone to the point of ordering vaccinations. That hasn't happened yet. But it's a difficult situation.